Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the fourth installment of Rob K's Corner of the End Zone. I'm Rob Clyfield, but you should know that by now. Just like you now know about a handful of modern-day superstars and long-retired legends who helped ignite and have since strengthened my appreciation for America's favorite game, football. You'll learn even more about me in this week's episode as we travel back in time to revisit what I've categorized as my 7 most unforgettable moments in college football over the better half of the last 2 decades. Some are dramatic, spine-chilling, last-ditch efforts that produced unbelievable outcomes. Others are career-defining plays that years later still carry special meaning or spark immediate inspiration. What do they all have in common? They will almost certainly never be replicated. So, without further ado, here are 7 undeniably great college football scenes that are forever seared into my memory. What better way to begin my countdown than with a moment that just about single-handedly separated Auburn quarterback Cam Newton from the rest of the pack in the 2010 Heisman Trophy race. Enter Newton's career day, courtesy of his legs, in a battle between unbeaten SEC foes. The self-dubbed Superman made plenty of wow impressions during his lone season as the Tigers' starting quarterback, but none felt as powerful as his 49-yard digital dash to the end zone versus number 6 ranked LSU in a Week 8 matchup with major BCS national title game implications on the line. Newton finished the afternoon with 217 hard-earned yards and 2 rushing touchdowns to his name, but no single run proved to be as awe-inspiring as the post-halftime spectacle that broke the game's 10-10 tie. In just a matter of seconds, Newton navigated through the middle of LSU's star-studded front 7, stuck his foot in the ground to cut right toward the sideline, and stumbled and nearly lost his balance before using his left hand to launch himself into a second gear into the open field. One more dodge and juke to his left later, and another burst into third gear to accelerate past several LSU defenders, and Newton was burying himself across the thick white line, entirely unbothered by the fact that Patrick Peterson was clinging onto his back. It's a moment that will likely stand the test of time because of the many successes Newton later achieved, both in a Tigers uniform and as the starting quarterback of the NFL's Carolina Panthers, an eventual league MVP. Before Cam owned the SEC and turned the tides at Auburn, another dual-threat quarterback was the talk of the town, not just in the South, but across the nation. Tim Tebow redefined the quarterback position at the University of Florida from 2006 to 2009, leading the Gators to a pair of BCS national titles and finishing in the top 5 of the Heisman Trophy voting twice after winning the award as a sophomore. I considered settling on Tebow's furiously candid speech after a devastating 31-30 loss to Ole Miss near the beginning of his junior campaign as my 6th greatest college football memory, since it practically immortalized his legacy at the Swamp. But instead, I've opted to go in a different direction, one that I think better suits the massive effect he had on opposing defenses and the opportunities his skill set presented his own offense. A moment that, for a lack of better words, I'll call the emergence of Tebow mania. Tebow didn't get the starting nod from Urban Meyer as a true freshman and wound up taking a back seat to incumbent starter Chris Leak. But his talents certainly were not wasted. During Florida's trek to the 2007 national title game versus Ohio State, Tebow played a crucial role, one that would earn him much of the fame he's still recognized for. In Week 6 of Tebow's freshman campaign, amid a typical SEC dogfight against the then 9th-ranked LSU Tigers and quarterback Jamarcus Russell, Florida's prized recruit was called upon to execute a play that would later be heard around the world: the jump pass. The simple dink and dunk from LSU's 1-yard line worked flawlessly and gifted the Gators their first lead of the game, but only because Tebow was the perfect man for the role. 3 drives earlier, his number had been called to operate a similar attack across the goal line, except originally, Tebow plunged forward using his legs rather than his arm. The second time around, LSU was caught completely off guard, and Tebow didn't hesitate introducing himself to all of Gainesville. And as if his hello wasn't incredible enough, 2 years later, Tebow trademarked the jump pass in the waning moments of capturing his second BCS national title, a hard-fought win over the Oklahoma Sooners. Of all things, the jump pass is quickest to come to mind whenever I think about Tebow's storied college career. Now, how about some kudos to the underdogs? Almost 13 years ago, two-time defending FCS champ Appalachian State traveled to the Big House to square off against the 5th-ranked Michigan Wolverines. Maybe you know how the rest of the story goes, maybe you don't. Regardless, here's the 5th greatest college football memory of my lifetime. On September 1st, 2007, the Mountaineers, a lopsided 33-point underdog, entered Michigan territory and surprisingly didn't wince. Not at the sight of legendary coach Lloyd Carr, fresh off his 11th season at the helm, which culminated 11-2 finish. Not at the sight of a Big Ten offense stockpiled with future NFL draft picks, including Jake Long, Chad Henne, Mario Manningham, and Mike Hart. And not at the sight of 107,000 screaming fans, the vast majority rooting for the maize and blue. No, the Mountaineers didn't wince one bit. Instead, they roared off the buses and exploded into the Big House like they owned the place, scoring on 4 of their first 5 possessions of the game. As expected though, the Wolverines roared back and managed to clinch a 1-point 32-31 lead with under 5 minutes to play. At this point, everybody was on the edge of their seats, including me, eyes locked in on the television screen, anxiously waiting to see how David could possibly defeat Goliath with everything at stake. Michigan, after all, was supposed to contend for a national title, not be challenged by a lower divisions champion right out of the gates. With time to spare, the game appeared to be in the hands of the Mountaineers' dynamic quarterback, Armani Edwards, whose name you may or may not remember. Until it wasn't. Edwards threw his second interception of the game on the first play of the Mountaineers' ensuing drive, and Michigan's offense returned to the field, seemingly, at that point, well in control of their fate. But, with 1:37 left on the clock, a 43-yard Michigan field goal attempt was blocked. Suddenly, the crowd's breathing stopped, and Appalachian State, having reversed the field, pulled within striking distance. With 30 seconds to go and all out of timeouts, the Mountaineers stunningly pulled back in front, courtesy of a gutsy kick from 24 yards out. But more magic was on its way. Henne and Manningham, to the amazement of everyone, connected on a 46-yard heave, and Michigan crawled back into scoring position as time trickled under 10 seconds.
There's a flag for interference. It's declined because the kick was good, which means Michigan is going to have a chance to win this game. It's Gingell again. He lines up from 37 yards out, and App State, who has fought so.
And so it was set. A shot at redemption for Michigan's kicker was set to be the Wolverines' saving grace. 37 yards separated Carr's team from potential embarrassment and a resounding victory. The next scene forever changed the future of both programs. Appalachian State safety Corey Lynch slipped through the left side of Michigan's line, extended his arms, and blocked Jason Gingell's kick, keeping one of the college football's greatest upsets intact.
Remember this day, man.
The final scoreboard read, Appalachian State 34, Michigan 32. Next in my countdown is arguably the most thrilling play of the last decade, and believe it or not, we have special teams and a typically dreaded late game review to thank. If you haven't guessed already, I'm talking about the utterly remarkable kick six that sent rival Alabama packing, dumbfounded, out of Jordan-Hare Stadium. On November 30th, 2013, with about 2 minutes to play, Auburn quarterback Nick Marshall led the Tigers on a game-tying drive that left back-to-back BCS champs Alabama with a mere 32 seconds to try and close out the contest in regulation. There's a high likelihood that Nick Saban still regrets, nearly 7 years later, 2 rash decisions he made during that half minute that wound up deflating any hopes of a third straight championship game appearance. 2 decisions that frankly changed the course of history. First, Saban got a tad bit greedy and challenged a timekeeping call that initially declared the end of the fourth quarter after Crimson Tide running back TJ Yeldon was pushed out of bounds by defensive back Chris Davis at Auburn's 38-yard line. Officials deemed 1 second actually was left on the game clock, which presented Alabama and Saban with another opportunity worth questioning. could Alabama's kicker nail a 57-yarder? Ultimately, Saban's resulting decision, which put the game in the hands of a redshirt freshman named Adam Griffith, proved to be a catastrophe. Saban did have his reasons for doing so. Starting kicker Cade Foster had missed on 3 attempts earlier in the game, and Griffith supposedly may have been the best long-range option.
Griff makes him from 60, in practice. So there was a shot.
57 yards proved to be too long, however, and Davis, who had made the unwise decision to push Yeldon out of bounds just moments earlier, was now pinned back underneath the goalpost at the command of his coach, ready to field any ball that fell short of its mark. Still, nobody could have possibly predicted the scene that would follow. Davis corralled the ball a few yards deep in the end zone, gradually moved upfield and darted left toward the sideline, gaining a few blockers along the way. And for some reason, Alabama looked desperately out of place, unprepared to stop a return of any sorts, as Davis cruised by every white jersey, picking up speed with every step he took. He flew into the end zone, and the late great Rob Bramblitt's radio call echoed across the country.
50, 45, there goes Davis! Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back! Auburn's going to win the football game! Auburn's going to win the football game! He ran the missed field goal back! He ran it back 109 yards! They're not going to keep him off the field tonight! Holy cow!
Okay. Now, let's get to the really good stuff. My top 3 moments in college football history that I recall watching firsthand, of course. My number 3 moment may be a lot of folks' number 1 memory, but do me a favor and just hear me out, because the very top of this list represents damn near everything that makes college football so much fun. Now, enter Vince Young's 4th and 5 touchdown run to the corner of the end zone to defeat USC in the 2006 Rose Bowl, aka the 2005 BCS National Championship. Just weeks earlier, Young took a back seat to the Trojans' Reggie Bush, who was awarded the 2005 Heisman Trophy. The distaste was evident on Young's face. But it was Young who was front and center on January 4th in Pasadena, when Bush and company couldn't keep up with the Longhorns' do-it-all dual-threat quarterback. Young's 9-yard game-winning touchdown run is the moment that will forever be seared into my memory, but it doesn't tell the whole story of Vince's near-perfect performance. The 6'5", 230-pound signal caller demolished USC's defense to the tune of 30 completions for 267 yards through the air and added another 200 yards and 3 scores on the ground. Those are filthy numbers.
Vince Young when he started to really move.
And to top it all off, Young led Texas back from an 8-point fourth quarter deficit. He was simply far and away the best player on the field that night, which makes his escape from the pocket and dash to the pylon on 4th and 5 feel more and more like fate rather than another ordinary seized opportunity. I'll never forget where I was and who I was with while watching Texas topple the number 1 ranked Trojans and the granddaddy of them all thanks to Young's larger-than-life showing. At number 2, which should make my number 1 moment obvious, is probably my favorite college football play that I've watched live, primarily because it involved perhaps my favorite college football player of all time. Let's revisit the scene in Lubbock, Texas, more than a decade ago, before Mike Leach was ostracized by his former team and Colt McCoy was the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. The Longhorns ran Texas, but on this night, November 1st, 2008, Leach, Texas Tech quarterback Graham Harrell, and receiver Michael Crabtree combined to create the perfect storm, led by one of college football's most tenacious ever air raid offenses, and upset the number 1 ranked team in all of the land. But of course, the upset wouldn't have been as memorable or significant if it didn't happen exactly how it did. After sitting on a 22-6 halftime lead, the Red Raiders' high-flying offense mustered just 10 points, while McCoy slowly but surely orchestrated what was building up to be a second-half comeback for the ages. With 1:29 left in the game, Texas finally clinched its first lead, pulling out in front by the slimmest of margins, 33-32.
33-32. Wow.
Unfortunately for the Longhorns, there wasn't a team in the country during the 2008 season better equipped to move the length of the field and quickly put points back on the board than Leach's fatally fast and eccentric offense. If only Texas could find a way to halt the Red Raiders' final possession. If only they could force an errant throw and take away the villains in black and red's last chance to send shockwaves throughout the state. What I really mean is if only Longhorn safety Blake Gideon didn't drop a routine interception that never should have been thrown his way. Texas had players in position to make a stop countless times. Texas got lucky and Gideon just dropped the ball. But none of it could possibly discount the play that immortalized Harrell and Crabtree and simultaneously put the expiration date on McCoy's Heisman crusade. With 8 seconds to go, Harrell dropped back, looked right, and fired a shot to the sideline to Crabtree, who reeled in his quarterback's pass at the Longhorn 6-yard line. For a split second, I assumed Crabtree may step out of bounds to set the Red Raiders up with a game-winning field goal try. I couldn't have been more wrong. Crabtree, colder than ice, tiptoed down the sideline, broke free of an arm tackle, and raced into the end zone, sending the blackout crowd at Jones AT&T Stadium into an all-out frenzy. That catch and throw is the stuff of legends, and I still get giddy remembering the initial ecstasy whenever I go back to rewatch it. Finally, what I know you've all been waiting for, what I view to be the greatest college football moment in my lifetime, maybe in part because I was there to watch it all unfold. The true Cinderella story, Boise State's 2007 Fiesta Bowl victory over perennial power Oklahoma. 13 years have passed since Chris Peterson's Broncos became an overnight sensation, but somehow, some way, I remember the back and forth affair like yesterday. I remember sitting in the corner of the end zone at University of Phoenix Stadium, now known as State Farm Stadium, where the Cardinals play. I remember sitting in disbelief as Boise State's offense, a cast of blue-collared playmakers, outshined the Sooners' defense, stacked to the brim with highly touted prospects. I remember Broncos fans rejoicing and pumping their fists as their team jumped out to an early 14-0 lead. I remember the hoots and hollers as Oklahoma pulled within reach, only for Boise State to fashionably extend their winning margin. And I remember the same folks' discussed and vented hatred for the Big 12 powerhouse and yellow flag-wielding zebras who may or may not have had a say in the game, when the Sooners finally found their footing and intercepted a Jared Zembransky pass and returned it 34 yards for the game's go-ahead score. Most of all, though, I remember the feeling of magic in the air when Zembransky confidently strolled back out onto the field and later delivered a 15-yard strike to Deshaun James, who then lateraled the ball back to teammate Gerard Rabb in true hook and ladder fashion, setting Rabb up with a game-tying score with 7 seconds left on the clock. I was starstruck in overtime when Adrian Peterson turned Oklahoma's first offensive play into a 25-yard trip to pay dirt. But nothing, I mean nothing, comes close to what I felt when Boise State's Peterson flaunted his extra-large cojones to everybody in attendance and the viewers across the country by dialing up a 2-point conversion play following the Broncos' redemption drive in overtime that couldn't have been scripted any better in Hollywood. The images are forever seared into my brain. Ian Johnson ever so subtly taking the ball from behind Zembransky's back, moving ever so calmly to the left, and hitting the Jets to blow by Oklahoma's last line of defense, into the end zone, securing Boise State's miraculous Fiesta Bowl victory. And deservedly, Johnson rushing straight to his then-girlfriend, a cheerleader for the Broncos, lowering down onto one knee and popping the question he likely waited years to ask, amid a crowd full of cheering strangers. A true fairy tale ending. In my mind, you can't beat that. The single greatest college football moment in my lifetime, without a doubt. That's all I've got for you this time, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Rob K's Corner of the End Zone. This countdown was totally subjective, so I expect to be hearing from some of you about some alternative selections in my DMs and comments section. Again, please reach out because I'd love to hear some feedback. Also, now that we've hit the halfway point of my summer series, I'm going to take 1 week off in order to regroup and recalibrate the mission for my final 4 episodes. As I mentioned week 1, I'm going to do my best to try and feature some pretty cool guests. So hang tight without a show next Monday, and I'll come back better than ever the following week, after getting some new topics and potential interviews lined up. Thanks for the continued support. It means the world. You know the drill from here. Let's connect.